Hi, hello, ladies. Welcome to another segment of A Sister's Back. Summer is in full swing, and even though we're recording when we're indoors today, I hope you're spending as much time outside as possible because we know how. Well, I guess it depends where you're listening from, but at least in Canada, summer is only for a brief time, and then we're back to hibernating in our homes. So, anyway, today we have a guest with us, a renowned mechanic, actually, from Calgary. And I say renowned because both myself and Roper have actually used his services. So he's renowned because he's well reputed. But before he introduces himself and we go into the topic, I'll just let everyone say hello and we'll let our guest today introduce himself. So we'll start with
Hello. How are you, ladies? Hope you had a great week. Happy to be here.
And over to you, Smilo.
All right. Hello, ladies. I wish there were some gents here, but it sounds like it's it's one of those platforms. But anyways, I am Smilo, the mechanic.
Welcome. We are very happy to have you, Smilo. And I guess what I consider a really important topic. And so today we're talking about car maintenance. And for some ladies, they might think it's, it's kind of I don't know, not as an exciting a topic, but I know from personal experience that I've been duped, Smilo, when it comes to car maintenance, because I didn't know what I should be looking for and essentially what to maintain on my car. So I've been in situations, I guess, where I go to a mechanic, he tells me what he tells me, I go with it, I guess, because I assume I don't know what's going on and I assume that he knows what he's talking about. So I guess to kick us off, my first question to you as a mechanic is what are some just basic things that you need to do in order to maintain your car, whatever car you have, and why is it important?
I think the first thing I would recommend, which I also recommend to every customer or client that comes through my doors, is that first of all, you need to find an honest mechanic or a shop that you do really trust, because the majority of shops out there or mechanics, they've been, labeled as scammers and, people who are after getting the money from, especially ladies, assuming that they don't know much. And I would say it's somewhat true, sometimes you might find somebody who is not mechanically inclined showing up with a vehicle and saying they hear noise, and right away they're assuming it's a big thing. They're prepared to pay thousands of dollars, and yet it's just a small little thing that's just loose, sometimes not even worth charging the person. It's just like, you push it away from the wheel or from the exhaust and let them go, and just encourage them, of course, to come back next time if they did, like your service. So my first thing before I go too far is that always try to find that good shop, the honest mechanic. That's the first thing to recommend to anybody, because if you are one of those individuals who go shop after shop and mechanic after mechanic, you will never build any rapport with those individuals, and they will never care for you. They will never care for your car. All they want is just your money. That's it. And that's how simple it is. But if it is a customer that keeps coming back to me, I get to know the car without even writing anything down. I know when last I worked on the car. I know what I did, and I even know what's next, because that car is always coming through my doors. So that's why I do recommend this. And now when it comes to the basic things to look into, again, it depends on the season of the year. Like right now here, we're talking about summer. Mm-hmm. So it's summertime. Of course, simple things like, tire pressure. In summertime, there's a recommendation on the tires that it's written on the door. If you open the driver door, you see there's a sticker there saying your PSI, which is your tire pressure, should be, let's say, 35 PSI. In summertime, I've seen some people still putting like about 40 something, 44 PSI, for instance. I had somebody last week, with 44 PSI over by about 8 PSI, which is quite a lot now. When you drive on highway with this heat, the tire still expands with the heat, and then that causes the tire actually to burst. So try to stay within the spec, if not at least go even a little bit lower with this heat. Then vice versa, in winter time, you want to make sure your tire pressure is at par. If it's 35, put 35, even 36 won't kill it, because in winter, tires are cold, the rubber is cold. So it takes longer when you drive on highway to add some pressure. So those are some of, just like one little thing that I can tell you. And then again, as I said, it's summer, things to check, it's your coolant. On the gauges there's a display that shows a C and an H. So C stands for cold, H stands for hot. So there's coolant. The purpose of coolant, just from the word coolant, is to cool. So it cools down the engine. So if that coolant is lower in your engine or it's leaking, then you will notice on the gauge, it will rise towards the edge. And you don't want that, because that can actually destroy your engine. Now you have to replace your engine. So again, if that stays down on cold for a long period of time, there's an issue again. It needs to be at a regulated temperature. I always use these examples, like for women, you're in the kitchen sometimes, so you're cooking there. The boiling points are different if you have a pot with a lid and a pot without a lid. So a pot with a lid, it's going to boil faster than a pot without a lid. So in order for you now to regulate that temperature, there's something called a thermostat. That thermostat is the one that's going to regulate the temperature, regardless whether there's a lid or no lid on your pot. So it's the same concept on the car. So always watch that, especially with this temperature that we're in. Again, in winter, it's the same thing. You don't want that to stay on cold. You want it always to be halfway, not on high H, not on low C. If it's on low C, again, it's cooling your engine at the same time. Also, that's the same water that actually gives you heat inside your car. So you want to make sure it stays at half. So it has two purposes: to cool the engine. Then winter time, that's where we get our heat inside the vehicle. And then another thing, try to check your oil level. So most cars, unless if you have the newer vehicles or European cars, unfortunately, some European cars, there's no dipstick. So it's all electronic. You're gonna have to, either go to a shop, they put a scan tool, a computer, and then they'll tell you about the level of your oil. But if there's a dipstick, which most of the time would be yellow in color when you open the hood of the engine, you want to pull that dipstick, wipe it dry with a tissue or a paper towel, whatever you have, a rag, put it back, pull it out, and check the level. There's minimum, there's maximum. As long as you're in between minimum and maximum, that's fine. You don't have to add anything. What you don't want is to be below minimum on the dipstick. Yeah.
I'm wondering if I can jump in on, okay, that's fine. Go ahead, Rob.
No, I was just going to ask, how often are you supposed to be checking these?
Some vehicles, like the older the vehicles get, my recommendation is at least once a month. You do your oil once every 3 months. Some people go like once every 4 months if they're using synthetic oil, which tends to last longer. So if you're using regular oil, which is only 5,000 kilometers, then I recommend you check your level once a month. And the older the car gets, they start to burn oil. You lose some of the oil without even having it leak out of the vehicle, but it's inside the engine, but being expelled into other areas of the engine. So I recommend once a month. But if you have those newer vehicles, you don't have to worry much. But again, within that span of 3 months, try to do it at least once or twice. because those engines are still in good shape.
Okay, I have two questions about oil, because I guess I've had a negative experience, and I think you know, mine was an older vehicle, and I thought I had enough oil, and it ran out, and essentially the engine locked. So that was a costly fix that I had to do. But what I wanted to ask in regards to the oil is, you know, if you're doing those regular maintenances, say every 4 months, they'll put a sticker on your vehicle that, you know, either come back on this date or once you've reached this mileage, right? So I was having a conversation with my dad, and he was saying, oh no, the mileage is more important than the date. I don't know what your take is on that in terms of your schedule for oil. Yeah, like changing it.
Yeah, he's correct. Actually, I always tell my stickers when I put on people's cars, I never put the date, because the person can do an oil change today and then they're working from home, and then they don't drive the car for like a month. Really, you know, they're just like putting in, like, let's say 500K a month. That's nothing. So which means in 3 months I'll be like about 1,500. So that's not enough really to come back for an oil change. So the mileage to me makes more sense. I would rather go with the mileage than the date. And again, just a note on those vehicles that are not being driven, even though after an oil change. Just imagine, you know, making coffee right now. You're using the what do you call, the tea bags or whatever. You know, you guys, you drink tea and coffee. You use something in there to make that coffee. You whether you're drinking that coffee or not, it becomes stale at some point. You want to change it. So it's the same with the oil. Like if you change your oil now and go park your car for 5 months, my recommendation is, even though you didn't drive at all, just go ahead and change your oil again, because that oil, I mean, it's still okay, but it's not. It has actually, it can lose its viscosity while it's not even driving, you know? Okay. But of course, when you're driving, it's a different story because it's being used, so it tends to lose. That's why when you're draining oil, you notice that it becomes like watery instead of being like, you know, oil. It changes, you know, there's viscosity. Yeah.
Oh, that's cool. So when I was strapped for cash a while back, I wasn't working, and, you know, strapped for cash, I was looking for certain things that I could change on the vehicle by myself. Are there certain things that are easy to do at home that people can just kind of do, that they don't need to, like changing your light bulbs, for example, right? That is something that a lot of people don't really know. It's very easy to do. I found out because I was like, okay, my indicator light is not working, but do I really want to go and pay $30 or $50 for somebody to change it for me? Are there other things that are very easy to do, you know, that you don't have to go in for every 2 seconds?
Yeah, I've had actually some of my customers in females come by, and I tell them that your engine air filter needs to be replaced, or your cabin air filter needs to be replaced. And I do show them how you take it out, because to me, again, it's just like as simple as like changing a filter on a vacuum in the house, or changing that tea bag. Again, you know, there's no screws or nuts and bolts. It's just some clips that you pop out. So yes, there are some things that actually anybody can do it. Even if I show my little daughter, she'll do it for me. She'll be able to do it. So things like some like engine air filter, cabin air filter, as you said, those signal lights. Yes, there are some, again, that are more complicated, even those things that I just mentioned, especially on the newer vehicles, because they've made everything so compact that you cannot get your hand in there. You have to sometimes remove the wheel, remove like some signal lights take like over an hour just to change, you know, just like a battery. Some vehicles now, to change a battery is a nightmare. You don't even know where it is. You know, you have to go and research to find out where the battery is located. So again, with the lights, I would you know, make a caution there again, because there's some new lights that people are using now, like HID, and then you have the old school ones, just the regular bulbs. Those ones are fine. You can touch them, you can change them, but the HID, there's a warning on them. The voltage is very high that it can actually cause some serious electrical shock on you. So you have to be very careful what type of light bulb are you changing. If it's just this regular 12 volts and all that, I mean, you see on the package that this is a regular light, that's fine, we will go ahead. Then there are some that, like aftermarket and especially European cars again, and I would caution somebody if you're not too sure to be safe, because some of them you have to kind of wear certain gloves. You can't just touch them with your oily hands. That actually can reduce the life, or even they can explode while you're changing them. So just be careful. Like some people do go after things like tires. They attempt to do tires themselves. Again, that's possible. Anybody can do that, but you want to be very careful, because now you're lifting a vehicle. So you have to know the lifting points. You have to know what gear position is your vehicle. Is it on park? Or is it on neutral? Is it on the gear by mistake? And then you don't want any vehicle to roll. There's tons of people that I've heard stories about them dying under a vehicle, or some that I know right now that have been pinned by a vehicle and been saved by the fire department coming there to rescue them. So you just have to be very careful, not to scare anybody, but always think of your safety first. Safety is priority. Some things are only $10, but is it worth your life? No. You might as well just go pay that person.
Yeah, I wouldn't do tires because, okay, so you saying people are getting pinned. I never thought of that, but I was thinking more of not being able to screw the bulbs on tight enough. And I've heard of people's tires just coming off on the highway. I definitely think that would be something I don't think I would be comfortable doing, at home type of thing.
Yeah, I wanted to touch on what you said as well, Smilo. I think you mentioned something that for me, based on my work, I move a lot. But when you say that if you find a good mechanic, honest mechanic, you have a relationship with them, like eventually, they'll be able to tell you, well, this you can change on your own, this you can change on your own, right? Because they know your car and they know what you're capable of, right? So, I mean, it's the same thing with people diagnosing themselves a lot these days with Google, right? Instead of going to the doctor, right? So it's a good point, right? If you want to save money, it makes perfect sense, because I remember getting my light bulbs changed for, I think the labor was $90 an hour, and it was an older car. But when a friend of mine changed it for me, he said, this is so easy, right? So for those things, you can do by yourself. Yeah.
That's true.
So,
Yeah. So let's say for the older vehicles, is there anything specific people need to pay close attention to? Because sometimes, you might be driving and then all of a sudden it just dies. For me, for example, I was driving and then my car just died, and then it turned out that the battery died. And I think the alternator or something or whatever was not charging and was not. How do you know that this is happening and then to get it in, or do you have to wait for it to die before you go in?
Yeah. So usually people with more vehicles, like for instance, a company that has a fleet, minimum 5-10 cars, they will do what you call preventative maintenance. So these things are they're planned in advance, that these vehicles they'll be taken to so-and-so every 3 months for a full checkup. However, for individuals, they don't usually do that. They only show up at the shop just to say, I need an oil change. And then the mechanic will just do an oil change and send you out. But if it's a fleet, it's different. When they come in for the preventative maintenance, so what they do is they do a full check. So they check pretty much everything, which, yes, if you go to a dealership, some dealership, you will get that service, because some, yes, they're doing that because they are in search of work. Some they'll do that because they will recommend, so that, and they just charge you back, because usually they don't do it for free. But some customers, when they hear that we're going to check your entire vehicle, they don't want that because they expect like a huge bill. So they say, no, I just came here for an oil change. So I do recommend, you know, again, maybe once every 3 months, just, you know, give your vehicle to a shop and just let them check and see what, you know, how the vehicle is, the condition of the vehicle. So that means the person will put the scan tool, the person will check the battery to see if it's charging okay. They will check the alternator to see if the alternator is actually charging. They'll look at the belt condition, which is driving those alternators outside, because things like belts, they do break quite often because people just ignore those things, but they'll be going to a SAM shop for oil change. And when the belt breaks the following day, they say, but my car was at the shop yesterday. Yes, but did you?
They didn't check the belt.
Yeah, but did you also suggest to them that, hey, I need a full service. I need like you guys to check, because sometimes if you don't, they will do as you have requested, because
minimum,
they think you're not willing to pay more. So my recommendation is like, you know, once every 3 months, just take your car to a shop. And again, as I said, you want that shop that you trust, because now if you take to another shop where you don't trust, or where, you know, they just want business, they will tell you the entire vehicle. Because I've had some customers come with a list, you know, that's even, the damage is more than what the car is worth. So there's not even a point to fix that vehicle, because if it's a $6,000 estimate and the vehicle is only worth $2,000, you might as well take that $6,000 and go find another vehicle then and sell the other one and top up and take $8,000 and go buy a better car. But again, those people will be exaggerating most of the time. So so once every 3 months, that's my recommendation. Pay that extra if it's just going to be an hour. Find out how much they charge an hour, and then just let them check, and then they make a list. And then based on that list, again, you can go through the list with the service advisor or the owner of the shop, and then find out which things are more critical to deal with now or in the near future. Because some things, it's just on the caution side that maybe down the road, you're going to need to do this, but for now you're okay. So you don't have to worry about everything. You don't have to do everything right now. Okay, so yeah.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much. I know we're coming to the end of our time here. Brother Smilo here is very busy.
It's okay. You can extend it.
Okay. I was gonna say, do you have any advice for, you know, for the new kids here that buy that you know, get gifted a vehicle and stuff? So I'm just thinking, I bought this vehicle off of the lot. Should I just assume that it's fine, given the fact that I got it from, I don't know, Honda or Chrysler or wherever? Should I assume that it's fine and not have it checked out?
No, never assume that the vehicle is perfect because you're buying it from a dealership or from an individual. I have lots of examples to give. I just said an individual not long ago. Right now, they're going through court system. They were hoping I can be a witness in this because they bought the car from a big dealership, and that vehicle, I don't even know how the person sold it to them knowingly that the engine was gone. And this is a family that's going through a rough time. And they came to me and I told them the engine is gone. And they went to some other place, same thing. They were told the same story, that the engine is not good. Then they went back to that dealership, and that dealership was kind of saying, yeah, we're aware of it, but they won't even release the money back. So now, of course, they're going through court. This is one example. There's tons of them. So my recommendation is, even myself, when I have a vehicle that I happen to want to get rid of it, though I do my best before I let go of a vehicle to somebody to fix, to be as honest as I can, I always tell them, don't take my word 100%. Just take this vehicle, go somewhere else, get that second opinion, because again, I'm a human being too. But always take that vehicle somewhere else for a second opinion. Even dealerships, they actually do allow you to take the vehicle to another mechanic. They don't mind. You just have to ask. They will give you the vehicle before you purchase it. and you go somewhere else and then get that second opinion. That's my recommendation, even to anybody. It doesn't have to be like the youngsters who are, new into the driving. Everybody, because the scammers out there, they can scam, they
Anybody.
don't discriminate in terms of ages. They can take anybody. So get that second opinion.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad Roper brought that up and that you mentioned that, Smilo, because I was going to say, well, for instance, if I, because money is tight, for most of us. But I've realized, I guess, through my experiences with car is, like, even for buying, I think I've been fortunate that I've been able to go with both times. I bought vehicles with people who actually know vehicles, because I know that, what, it happens. It looks shiny, it looks good, but it might very well be a lemon, right? So,
Yeah.
I mean, and sometimes, well, maybe there's not that person to support you in your life, but I'm glad you say that you can actually take it to a mechanic and a mechanic can give you an opinion before you buy it. It's like when you buy a house, right? There are home inspectors who look at a house, the piping, the furnace and what have you before you buy it. One thing that I wanted to ask as well in regards to cars, there are desires when we buy a car, like I want this car. But sometimes I think we don't also consider that part of buying a car is also considering the maintenance fee, right? Like I know, for instance, European cars are a bit harder to maintain. I guess just go into that, like maybe just help us in terms of, considerations when you're buying a car. What is important for you to consider when you're buying a car?
Well, I guess the first thing is, what's your budget? As you said, European vehicles are not cheap. Like you take for instance, BMW for an oil change. That oil change will be done once a year, because usually they put like 12 to 24,000 K oil there in the filter that can last that long. So you find that maybe the price for doing that oil change might be around $500. And then here's a Honda Civic 2006, and the oil change, somebody's charging you 60 something dollars. So that vehicle, you'll be okay to do oil change 4 times a year. And so 60 times 4. So you're not even, close to what you just paid for that BMW. Just here, we're talking about simple thing like an oil change. So it boils down to what you can afford. So European cars, we all know that they are not cheap vehicles to maintain. Of course, even to buy them, they're not cheap. And then you have American cars, Ford and GM models, they're okay in terms of maintenance. It's not that expensive. And then you have Japanese vehicles or Asian vehicles. Again, they're not too expensive to maintain. But when now you come to bigger things where you have to do like, a brake job or even something heavier goes wrong, then you will notice a huge difference. So depending on what's in your wallet, I will say, you'll be able to know what you want to buy. Again, what I would also suggest is that when it comes to European cars, try to avoid buying the ones that are out of warranty.
That's what I was going to say. Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Yeah, I'm glad you touched on that one.
Yeah, most of them, when they hit about 120,000, they're out of warranty. And that's when you usually start to notice issues. As I'm just speaking right now, I just finished doing a transmission on one of the BMW 5 Series. If I tell you that the transmission alone, just to buy from BMW, they wanted 11,000. And that vehicle is not even worth 11,000. It's only like worth maybe 5,000. So now we have to look for a used transmission, and there's none in the entire city. There was only one. Now we're just scrambling for that one transmission. We're not even too sure if it's a good transmission. But I still, bought it, took a chance, installed it, thank God everything is okay. The
Good.
person is happy. However, there's more issues on that vehicle now on the engine side. And I just told them, you know what, at this point, they're just going to drive it as is until it breaks down, because you're going to have to pump a lot of money. So that, again, that's a mistake they made of purchasing a vehicle that's old in terms of, like a European vehicle. They're beautiful vehicles. They drive fast. Everything very comfortable. But when it comes to especially bigger jobs to be done, they are not cheap. But again, there's some people out there would say, they only drive European cars, they're okay taking them to those shops. That's fine. But for those who don't have much money and they want to save, my suggestion is try to stay away from those vehicles unless you're really ready for them. Stay away. There's lots of options out there. There's, Asian cars, as I said, there's some American cars. Again, the parts, you will be able to get those parts locally, or even if you go online. Sometimes European vehicles, you have to wait for a part that's coming all the way from Germany, and they're telling you 6 to 8 weeks for that part. Now that vehicle is down, you might end up using Uber, or you have to rent a vehicle. By the time it comes, the amount of money you've spent and the stress that you've gone through is not worth your time or your life. Yeah.
I'm glad you touched on how do I say this? I can only base it on my experience, I guess. When I purchased a Mini Cooper, my first instinct was to go on Facebook Marketplace. And there were lots of nice looking Mini Coopers that were priced at a particular price point. But it's because they're getting close to being out of warranty, and they had quite a bit of mileage on them. So essentially people were trying to dump them onto someone else, right? But if you buy a vehicle that's within warranty, if things break down, especially like you're saying for European vehicles, at least the dealership will be it's covered by your warranty, certain things that break down. And you need to be clear, well, what things are covered under the warranty if I purchase this vehicle. And I'm also glad you touched on the budget. The budget is not buying a BMW for $15,000. Are you going to be able to maintain it when it starts breaking down? Because at $15,000, it's had a lot of mileage on it, right? So so I'm glad you touched on those points. Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true.
So for people who use their vehicles as for driving or whatever, I'm guessing the maintenance would have to be done more frequently than your regular person who drives to work and back and whatever. So for those people who drive on a daily, how frequently do you recommend that they get their car checked out, and what are some of the things that you think would be problem areas that actually do need to be checked out in terms of like maintenance, preventative maintenance?
What I would say is let's use Uber as an example, for instance. I mean, the people who are doing Uber or Skip right now, or the taxi guys, those guys, you notice that they actually go for an oil change sometimes, like about every 3 weeks. That means once a month, like they go for an oil change, because they put so much mileage when they're busy, and those cars come winter time, they're always like running, when a vehicle is running without even you driving it, it's actually putting mileage. However, it's called hours. That engine is putting hours. So the life of the engine is actually still working. That's why there's some machineries that operate without wheels, but this still is an engine. That engine needs to be changed. The oil needs to be changed, but that machine is not even moving. So it's the same concept with those vehicles for those people who are always on the road. So my recommendation to those ones is, of course, they have to now follow that sticker, because if they've been given 8,000, and these guys, like I know one of my clients, from Friday, Saturday, Sunday, one weekend, he told me he put about 2,000 K.
What?
He was
Possible.
he was almost like working 24 hours a day. He was so busy, that guy. Like, he gets sent back and he's here all night. He's just not even stopping to eat. He's just so busy. So a person like that, if I just done an oil change, that means another 1,000 they're coming back, or I mean another 3,000 they'll be coming back, so which they can hit that 3,000 so fast. So again, that's a good question that you asked. Depending on the application, what you're using your vehicle for, that can change. So there's some things like brakes. So people who are driving within the city limits, you notice that their brakes tend to go faster than somebody who is always on highway. If you're on highway, how often do you apply your brakes? You can drive from here to Edmonton, maybe you only apply the brakes once or twice to slow down, and you're not even stopping, just to slow down. But for people in the city here, it's a go stop because there's a traffic, there's a kid crossing the road, there's a dog, running the opposite direction. So your brakes are getting used more often. Then that type of vehicle will find itself at the shop more regularly than the other one that spends more time on the highway. So depending on the application, so the more you use your vehicle, then it cuts down on the time. But again, once every 3 months is still not a bad idea to take your vehicle to a shop, because 3 months will pretty much cover everything. I mean, if you put your brakes, it doesn't matter what you do, at least they should give you minimum 6 months, depending on the type of the brakes. Again, there's all kinds of type of brakes. There's cheap ones, there's okay ones, there's the premium ones. So some people, depending on the price, they always jump for the cheapest brakes, which come summertime or when they're hot, you hear the noise, but that noise doesn't mean the brakes are done. Now they're getting confused because they've been told that when they hear this noise, that means the brakes are done, but it's because of the type of the brakes they're using is called metallic, which is metal. So now your metal pads and your rotors are metal. When they come into contact, then they make that noise, just like our garbage trucks that you hear when they're picking the garbage, they always make noise. They use those type of brakes because they last longer on the commercial vehicles. However, when it comes to personal vehicle, it's a different story. They can be annoying, with that noise. Then that's when you want to go to different application like, mid-grade, something in between, or the premium, which are nice and soft when you do brake application.
I like that you mentioned that because I always freak out every time I hear my brakes screeching. So I'm like, I need to fix this. I need to fix it. So I ended up going, there's a spray. I don't know what kind of spray it was that they ended up spraying, because they were like, your brakes are fine. It's just they are just, it's just a screech. So they ended up spraying something, and that felt good. But I always freak out whenever I hear the screeching, of my brakes.
So, I mean, it confuses some people. I do get some people coming by, say, hey, my brakes are done. And I look, I'm like, hey, your brakes are like 90% new.
Yeah.
They're still new. It's because of what you used. So I won't change them for you unless if you really want me to change them, I'll go ahead. But you can still drive like this for another year or 2 years, So, yeah.
So speaking of brakes, Smilo, I had 2 questions about tires and brakes. I'll start with the brakes one. The rust around the brakes, is there any way of preventing it? Because like when you're looking at the tire, I sometimes see like rust. Is there any way of preventing it, or it's kind of?
So I'll answer this question in, I have 2 answers for that question. So if you buy cheap brake pads, you notice if you have some nice rims, there'll be dust all over your rim, like inside. That dust is actually from the pads, the brake pads, Then there's also rust or the rotor, that thing that's inside that looks like a disc.
Yes, that's the one.
That's called a rotor or a disc. It will change the color. That's normal. However, if you had installed the cheaper version of it, it doesn't take much to rust, because what's happening is when you park your vehicle outside, there's moisture at night. And then that actually causes rust. And then that's how that rust develops. And then let's say if you don't drive your car for a couple of days and it's still sitting outside, it's raining or there's snow, or, then you'll find that it happens too fast. It rusts really quick. But if you buy the premium rotors, which they might cost, to be honest with you, whenever you go buy parts or when you take your vehicle to a shop, let them give you a couple options. Are you putting ask them, because you won't know what I'm talking about in terms of like, basic, mid-grade and premium. So you can ask them, are you putting the premium parts or you're putting the regular parts? Then they will let you know that, oh, we were just going to go with the regular. Then you say, okay, can you quote me on the premium as well? Because sometimes the difference could be just next to nothing. There are times where it's just only $10 extra. Then you get the good stuff. So now if you were using the good rotors, they come coated to prevent that rust.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah, so those ones can last for quite some time without rusting. Yes, eventually that coat will get cleaned and all that, and then they'll start rusting, but it will take quite a while. So those are the two type of rust that I would speak of, that on the rotor caused by the moist, and also the type of the rotor that you bought, the entry level, or the brake pads when they are filing from the friction. Then you'll find there's dust all over your rim. Sometimes you go for a car wash and you wash it off, then it comes back again. So that's caused by the type of brake pads that you are using. Yeah.
Okay.
So just
the other
wondering.
thing, you were asking about brakes. You're asking about brakes too?
No, I was going to ask about something else close to brakes, but no.
Okay, I was going to
Go
ask
ahead.
about tires. So all-season tires versus, changing to winter tires. What's your opinion on that? So sometimes you buy a vehicle and it says all season. Should you just stay with those, or actually you're better off buying winter tires?
So you have 4 different types of tires that I will speak of. So you have winter tires, which of course, from the name, winter tires, they are meant for winter. And then you have summer tires. Again, based on the name, it's just strictly for summer. Then you have all season tires. That means they are they're usable for any of the 4 seasons that we have, if we ever have 4 seasons in Canada. To me, it's only 2 seasons. Either summer or winter. That's it. So then you have tires that are called all weather.
Oh.
Yeah. So
those are American, right? Or maybe I'm wrong.
No, all weather is actually
Canadian.
Yes, I actually recommend all weather more than all season. That's what I've been installing on most of my customers who are actually looking for all season, or who don't want to keep switching winter to summer. So I just tell them, get all weather tires. The reason being, those ones are actually rated for winter as well. Unlike all season is just M plus S. So that's, you notice on the tire outside is written M plus
S.
Plus S. So that's what you call mud and snow. But the truth is, it boils down to the
temperature,
freezing. Freezing point on those tires. So winter tires in winter, you find that they might be okay. You have your car parked outside up to -20. The rubber is still soft. You can push it down at -20. Then all season in winter, they'll freeze at -7. So that's why most people who are using all season tires in winter, they have hard time, it affects their braking force, their stopping point as well. All those things are affected because they're just skidding all over the place, because that rubber is frozen already by the time the temperatures hit -20, -30.
Oh.
Then now you have all weather. All weather, the freezing point is actually better than the all season. So they tend to, let's say, just for giggles here, we just throw the numbers and say the all season was -7. All weather might be -15. So you are gaining another, 7 points there. So which is better. And then you have summer tires. Some people try to run summer tires in winter. Those tires, I think, they just freeze at 0. because they are the worst. Some people say, oh, it's up to the driver. If you have a, if you're a good driver, you can drive with any tire. That's not true.
I've heard that.
That's not true. I've driven 4x4s. I've driven all kinds, rear wheel drive, front wheel drive, all wheel drive, with all kinds of tires. And you can tell the difference. If you have winter tires, full winter tires, and somebody has all weather tires or all season right next to you on the same vehicle, and then you say, let's go at 50K an hour, and then let's all stop and see who's going to stop at a short distance. It's the one with the winter tires, then maybe all weather next, and then all season. That summer person might be all over or on the ditch, depending on the speed limit. So you have to, it's good to understand, the differences on the tires. Just like it's with the oil, it's the same thing, synthetic and regular oil. There is some differences on these things, but sometimes people don't get educated on you just take your car to whatever Canadian Tire. They're like, okay, we're just putting tires for you. These ones are $300. These ones are $500. Then you're like, oh, put the $300 ones. But what's the difference? The difference is that these ones can be even studded. That means even the grip on it in terms of winter, they're the best because you can even stud them. That means you put those nails to even give you that grip for people like you living in the mountain, like, in Vancouver mountains, climbing that mountain with summer tires in wintertime would be the worst thing to do. Yeah, but a studded tire would be the best thing to do.
Yeah.
And I'm glad you talked about that. How do I say this? That stopping speed, what have you? Finances help for a lot of us, I think, in making decisions. They influence our decisions. But you're not only putting your life at danger, but the life of others.
That's
so it's
true.
a responsible decision, I guess, to have, whether it's your brakes or your tires, it's the life of others as well that you should consider. So
I normally have winter tires and all seasons. I never have the summer tires because it's pointless to me. What's the point? So yeah, I would recommend that people get the all weather and winter if you want to change them out throughout the year. My question also that I wanted to pose is shocks. How often are you supposed to be looking at those and changing them? Because I hear a lot of people saying, oh, this car is very bouncy at the back. But then is it really bouncy, or is it just that the shocks need to be changed,
Yeah. So the purpose of shocks or a shock is to keep that wheel running smooth on the road. So if you look on the highway, it doesn't matter how fast the vehicle is going. If it has good shocks, you notice that the wheel spins smooth, like there is no bumps or anything. The shock is to actually maintain that comfort. But when the gas inside, because those shocks actually inside of them, there's gas and oil. The gas is actually what keeps it solid or pumping in and out. There's gas in there, and then the oil that's inside usually leaks out as a sign indicating that the shock is done. So if you visually look at your, I'll call it a shock or a strut. Some, they call it different names. I won't explain what the difference is, but for simplicity here, we just say the shock. If you go look visually from under the wheel, because most of them you can see them. If you see any oil, of course, oil is going to be black, especially if it's fresh. If you notice that oil, that means the shock is done. There's no gas in there. You're pretty much driving on the spring because there's this coily spring there. You're just using the spring if it has that spring. If it's the rear one, some of them on minivans, they don't have the spring. It's just a shock, like a pump for pumping your bike. It's similar to that concept. Then there'll be just oil. And then at that point, it's done. So if you ignore that, it damages your tires. You find that some tires are bumpy, like on top, they're just bumpy. And it also can affect your suspension, things like your wheel bearing. A tire now costing you more than what you thought. So it's always, a shock. So it started with a shock. So how often should somebody be looking at those things? Again, it ties into that preventative maintenance that you yourself have to decide that once every 3 months, I will take my car in. And, you know, I would also suggest here that budgeting something for your car maintenance is another crucial thing, because people tend to say, you know, I don't have anything for my vehicle to take it to a shop for $100 fee. You know, what I've noticed, or what I've read also from some of the financial advisors, is that whenever you do your budget or your spreadsheet, always, you know, consider things like that, car repairs, something, because a car, you always have a car until, you know, the day you die or until you retire. So, I mean, when I say retire, not to go to a senior home, but to go underground 6 feet. So anyway, so you will always have a car. So it's always a good thing to have that budget, even if it's like $500, you know, account sitting there, so that if, you know, you have to take that car, then they tell you, yeah, you need these things, and then now you budget from there again and deal with those things. So how often should you be checking those shocks? It's part of that preventative maintenance. And also, if you're noticing something, because sometimes people bring a car to a mechanic and say, I want you to look at my car and just tell me if there's anything wrong. They don't want to tell the mechanic or the shop what they're experiencing, because they're thinking, oh, if I tell them, these guys, they'll find some more work here, then they'll kill me. No, let the person know that when I'm driving this vehicle, it's pulling to the right, it's pulling to the left, you know, it's not going straight, or I hear this clanking noise, or, you know, like I hear, you know, bouncing noise from the back. Let them know. That will actually lead them to taking your vehicle for test drive. Because if you just say, look at my car, they'll just put your car on the hoist and look at it visually. You cannot tell visually that a car is pulling unless you take it for a drive. You know, you cannot tell a vehicle is, the shocks are completely gone, even though it started leaking. Some of those shocks, the springs are so solid that you can still drive for months without any issues. But when a person now goes for test drive, then they get to hear some sounds, like notice something wrong with the steering, or, you know, or even at a point where when they turn on your AC, which, you know, here I'm talking about the air conditioning. When they turn on the air conditioning, then they realize that actually your air conditioning is not even working, because when they're at the shop, sometimes they're not even going to turn on your air conditioning because your vehicle is not running. It's just up in the air. To get the AC to work, you need the vehicle to be running. So that person will be like, it's too hot, I need to turn on the AC. Then they realize it's not working. Then they come back and let you know, hey, by the way, are you aware that your car is just blowing hot air in summer? It should be blowing cold air inside. Do you want us to look into that? But you might not be aware, and then you're carrying some passengers or some people, and then they're always complaining about your vehicle, and you're like, oh no, my vehicle is like this, and you keep rolling your window. But it could be something that can be fixed. So I would say leave that as part of the package of a preventative maintenance, and the mechanic should be able to pinpoint those things. Again, you can also do a visual inspection yourself. Things like things that are outside, you know, some people might not know how to open their hood. You know, it's always underneath there by the kick panel on your feet on the side. You know, if not, go on YouTube. There's lots of videos these days. You can go and say, how do I open the hood of my vehicle, 2010 Honda Civic? And you see somebody, because it might sound like a dummy question, but there's some people out there who have taken time to make that 1-minute video for somebody. So you pop your hood. When you pop your hood, there's all kinds of fluids in their containers. Look at them. You know, some of them might not make sense to you. Take your manual if you have it, and then see what that container stands for. And then there'll be instructions written there. Some of them, for instance, like a coolant, it says, do not open when it's hot. Yes, do not open it when it's hot or when it just came off highway, because that water can be boiling, you know, and it's dangerous. It can burn you if you don't know how to do it. But things like brake fluid, as we mentioned about checking your engine oil, brake fluid, you want to check those containers, make sure you have enough fluid. Engine oil, you check that, especially if you're planning, you know, for a long trip. You don't want to be stranded on the road. Check those things. And then coolant, As I said, if it's hot, do not open it. But some of them, they have a side glass. You can see through the plastic, the level, minimum, maximum. Then you know that it's full. So you're okay. And then there's power steering. Again, that one you want to check and see. Some of these things you will notice. If your power steering fluid is leaking right now, that actually gives you that softness of the steering so that it's easy to turn. If it's leaking, you will hear something making noise. A pump will be whining, making noise. And then your steering eventually gets hard, very difficult. It becomes manual, like just back in the days when, those bus drivers, we used to see them trying to make a turn and they have to get up just to turn the bus. So your vehicle will revert into that situation. And again, speaking of the trips, you check those things. It's always depending on how far you're going, and if it's those highways where there's not much in terms of garages or gas stations, carry some coolant with you, and then carry things like, even a liter of engine oil, especially with older vehicles. It's very helpful because you never know, you might end up, needing to use that, or somebody might down the road be in need of that, and you might be a lifesaver to them, just so that they can drive to the next gas station or next shop or whatever.
That's actually a good idea. When you were talking about AC, I just remembered one of my friends actually bought a vehicle in summer. They tested for AC and everything, but then in winter, they realized there was no heat.
Yes.
So it's something to watch out for as well when you're buying some of these vehicles from Kijiji.
Yeah, that happens a lot. I had somebody actually, a big organization bought a vehicle. It was in winter. No, it was in summer. So they checked the AC, it was working. They never checked the heat because it's hot. Who wants to check heat right now? Nobody. But whenever you go to buy a car, it's always important to do a full check, So now came winter time, that minivan didn't even have heat at all. And they took it to a dealership. Dealership told them thousands and thousands of dollars, because to do those heating issue, the entire dash, everything has to come out.
Mm-hmm.
It's a 15-hour job to do. That's what it took me to do that job. And the part was as cheap as a 99-cent part. But you have to dig in all the way to do that. So if they had seen that, they could have walked away from the vehicle. But they ignored it. They said the vehicle was okay. And it was, again, summertime. So it's always important to, check everything.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow, lots of really good information. I feel, I was gonna say I'll go with affirmative. I feel like we'll need a part two, because now we have the emergence of electric vehicles, and I know you and I, have had side conversations about vehicles that I think, other women could, well, our main demographic is women, but other people can definitely learn from. So
we have guys who watch as well. They just don't comment. Mostly women comment.
You just sneak in and
they watch, but they don't say anything. You get inbox messages of good job and all this, but so we can't say that men don't watch. It's just the majority of the people that watch our show are women, because it is a sister's back, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So like Smilo, like you have spitted out so much knowledge. I learned a lot. And I think even some things that I thought I had down packed, I realized, okay, I've been missing this and that. And I think for me, my motivation of keeping my vehicle, up and running is because of the type of work that I do. And just knowing that if I don't maintain my vehicle, it's going to be super costly. And I think sometimes you have to have a bad experience, for you to stay on top of things. So I've learned a lot from you today, and I really appreciate it. So thank you. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Definitely there has to be a part two. There's probably a lot more that we did not think about. We might think about later.
All right.
Yeah.
All right.
And Smilo, where can we find you? I know you're based in Calgary. What's the name of your shop, and where can we find you?
Yeah, so I'm in Calgary. Currently, of course, my business is operating at a small scale than what I would like, to see it at. So my company name, of course, is called SL Auto Loop. You can check me on Facebook under SL Auto, or you can also visit my Google page under SL Auto, and you can see what testimonies I've got from people, reviews that have used my services. And yeah, so I pretty much, as I said, work at a very small scale right now, but I'm hoping eventually to become one of those dealership. But my name won't be converted into stealership. It will be dealership.
Okay. Dealership.
So, yeah.
It will be. Yeah. It will be dealership.
You know what?
Like both Trop and I have been customers of yours for a long time. But I remember once, like, you started operating at home, and now you're at a shop. And so I'm excited about your growth. And like you're saying, we want to see you explode, right? So
yeah, I was gonna say both Kanishan and I vouch for you 100%. Mm-hmm. The amount of work and the care and the I was in tears when I went to Smilo. I'm like, my guy's dead. What do I do? And just the understanding and the help and you going out of your way was just like amazing. So ladies, if you're in Calgary, we recommend that you find Smilo. I'll try and put your Facebook handle on the link below as well, just so people can have an easy access to your page, and then they can go from there. So yeah, definitely appreciate your work, and you're one of those people where it's like you leave the shop and you're like, yeah, I feel like I've actually been served. Other people you leave, you're like, oh God, what just happened? Right. So yeah, we totally appreciate that. And especially as women, we know we've been duped so many times, but just to have someone that is genuine is huge for us.
That's true.
And so with that, do you have any last words, Kanishan?
No, I'm done. Thank you very much, Smilo.
No, Smilo, do you have any last words?
Well, I'll just say thank you very much for having me over. I've been quite busy and I wasn't too sure if I was going to make it today. And as I said to all the ladies and those gents who sneak in this platform, even though they don't belong here, remember my first words is find that shop, that mechanic, just like finding a doctor. Once you have a good doctor who knows your history, who really cares, that doctor won't give you 30 seconds. They'll actually give you at least 2 to 5 minutes to hear why you came to their clinic. So it's the same thing, because you go to some shops, some of the people don't even have time to listen to your story. They just say, drop your car and go. And again, these days, when somebody does a job on your vehicle, this is my practice. I take pictures of whatever I do before I do it, while I'm doing it, after it's done. And I communicate with the customer. I send them the pictures so that they see what I've done. And then before I release the vehicle to them, I take them in and show them a pile of the parts that I've removed, or whatever the part I've removed, so that they see that this is the part that has been removed. Because most big shops or some shops out there, they'll tell you, yes, we did this on your vehicle, but do you have any proof? I just said one individual, just a quick story here, who took a car for an alignment at a big place. And they told them that, yes, the alignment was done. And they sold them brand new tires for $800. And those tires didn't even last 2 months. They were done. Why? Because the alignment was not even done. The mechanic lied. And these mechanics, some of them are paid by commission. So the more work they do, the more money they make. Then that person, I sent them, how we found out, I sent them to another shop where they do alignment. And because I don't do alignment, unfortunately, because of the space where I am, sent them to another shop, and that shop was able to put the car up. And they were like, there's no alignment that was done here, because we cannot even remove the nut that those guys, if they touched it 2 months ago, even a 12-year-old should be able to open it, but they could not, even with the heat. So they ended up having to cut things and replace with new parts. And yet the other place charged that person, sold them new tires, and said we did it. Now, you see, so that's again boils down to what I was saying is, when you have that good place, stay there, deal with them. Unless something happens again, still communicate with them if you're not happy, because sometimes things do happen, not by, it's not by intentionally, but it could be just a misunderstanding. And then, stay with that shop or that individual. And yeah, that's my biggest thing, because I always tell the customers that come to me, I don't really, I'm not trying to keep them, but I always tell them that this is my recommendation, because sometimes the stories that I hear, I'm like, it's because you're all over the place and nobody cares about your vehicle. So yeah, so that's how I would conclude is be careful out there, and your safety is priority. You want to go back to your house in one piece. You want to go back to your house able to walk and able to see. Some jobs that sometimes you need to wear safety glasses, so do wear safety glasses. Some jobs you have to wear gloves on your, you cannot just have things touch your skin, because they can actually penetrate and cause some certain diseases. Probably Kaneshini, you would know all this, like coolant will cause, those things are poisonous, but we get them on our skin, sometimes not by choice, but it's because of the nature of our job. But some people can react on those things, even on oil. Some people have issues with oil on their skin. So in brake clean, you have to be careful again. That's not good for your skin. It dries it. And then next thing, you touch your paint of your vehicle, it can just remove the paint on your vehicle. So yeah. Anyways, thank you very much for having me. And I look forward for that part 2, hopefully in the near future.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you, ladies. You guys have a great week, and see you again on A Sister's Back.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.